Boris Johnson won his vote of confidence in British Parliament, but do we really need to bother? Because British politics, why are we interested? Begane ki shadi mein Abdullah Diwana, it's so far away. And in any case, the Brits don't seem to take their Prime Minister as seriously as the Americans might take their President, or we Indians might take our Prime Minister, particularly when it's a Prime Minister called Narendra Modi or Prime Minister with a full majority. In Britain, it isn't quite like that. So Boris Johnson faced a vote of confidence. He won it. Imran Khan lost it the other day. This one has won it. And this level of internal party democracy is particularly significant at a time when we have in India a situation where parties are not even willing to trust their own MLAs with voting for their own candidates for Rajya Sabha. See right now in Rajasthan, in Haryana, in Maharashtra, parties are taking their own MLAs away and locking them up in resorts because they don't trust them. On the other hand, you have a situation where MPs are giving a call to vote against their own Prime Minister and are voting against him. Now, I will ask you a question and tell me honestly if you have the answer. No Googling and no figuring out on the basis of suspicions once I start reading out the numbers. So now here are the numbers. Boris Johnson won this election because he got 211 MPs voting for him. 148 voted against him. What's his margin? You can see that he has a margin of 63 MPs. You would think that's a comfortable margin of victory. So why is so much of the British media now saying that his days are numbered, that this might be a victory, but he's a lame duck? In fact, The Guardian has gone to the extent of describing him as rancid Heineken. The exact sentence is the Heineken has gone rancid. That's also a little bit of a reference to Boris Johnson's own beer drinking parties. Now, why is everybody taking such a dim view of this? The other question, the other figure you might look at is that the numbers 211 and 148. 148 against, 211 in favor. These add up to 359. Whereas the numbers in British Parliament, House of Commons, the total strength of the House of Commons is 650. So how come only 359 out of 650 voted? Now, don't tell me that you've Googled and don't tell me that you've now made your calculations. The fact is, and it's something that's very foreign to us in India, very foreign. It wasn't so foreign at one point of time in terms of parliamentary practice. So people of my generation might remember something that happened when, say, I was about 8 years old, right? But since then we've forgotten this, that parties, even ruling parties, also have elections and votes of confidence within themselves. So this was a vote of confidence where only the members of the ruling party voted. Only the members of the Conservative Party or the Tories voted. So Tories in the House of 650 have a strength of 359. That's a large majority, and that's a landslide that Boris Johnson had led them to after it became so popular because he had backed Brexit while his own party, David Cameron and others, had gone with the stay option. But he has gone with the leave option. He's a former mayor of London. Very popular, very jovial, very entertaining. So he led his party to such a major victory. This was a vote of confidence that MPs within his own parties had sought against him. So the rule in the Conservative Party is that if 15% of the MPs demand so, then they will have to hold a vote of confidence on their own Prime Minister. Now this keeps the opposition members out. Obviously, I suppose if the opposition members are voting, then maybe the Tory party will be together, because then it becomes one party against others. But in this case, this was a division within the party. So much of the commentary I see says, okay, he's won this election, but that figure 148 will haunt him for the rest of his term. That's 148 of his own party people who voted against him. Now just think about it. Think about it. It's notional. I'm not suggesting anything. I might get into trouble even for using this as an example. Say the BJP has 303 MPs in this parliament. And BJP decides to have, first of all, BJP will need, say, 46, 47 MPs to say, we want a vote of confidence on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. A vote of confidence does take place, and out of the 303, say 120 vote against Prime Minister Modi within the BJP. What will happen to them? And what will happen to the 45 odd who would have suggested there should be a vote of confidence? You can apply this to, I'm not singling out Mr. Modi, you can apply this to any Chief Minister of India. You can apply this to Aam Aadmi Party government in Delhi. Can Aam Aadmi Party requisition a vote of confidence against its own leader, Arvind Kejriwal, or say TMC against Mamata Banerjee? So just think about that. So that is how this democracy works, and that is why I thought it was interesting for us to look at this. Because I tell you what, honestly, even I was foxed. Because when I saw these numbers come out, I said, British House of Commons is 650. How does somebody win with 218? So many can't be abstaining. And that's when the penny dropped, and I figured. And frankly, I should have remembered this better, being the vintage that I am. Because in India also, we had a tradition earlier of there being an election, at least a vote for the selection of the Prime Minister in the post-Nehru era. In 1966, when Mrs. Gandhi was appointed Prime Minister after Lal Bahadur Shastri's death, there was an election in the Congress Parliamentary Party, that is all the MPs of the Congress Party, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha together. There were 524 of them. There was a ballot cast. Morarji Desai got 169 votes. Indira Gandhi got 355 votes. Of course, Kamraj was supporting Indira Gandhi and she got a wide majority. But the fact is that there was a contest. Similarly, after Nehru died, Lal Bahadur Shastri versus Morarji Desai was also a contest. The last time we saw something like that almost happen was in 1991. After Rajiv Gandhi's assassination, when the Congress party had to elect a leader of its own parliamentary party, then Sharad Pawar decided to challenge Narasimha Rao. And it looked like an election will take place until at the last moment Sharad Pawar realized that he'd done a very good job of campaigning and collecting support, but he was still about 35 short. So at the last moment, he withdrew from that contest. So we've even forgotten, today's generations have forgotten that for Prime Minister there was a contest. Now for every Prime Minister, every Chief Minister, what we have is a unanimous decision. So and so is the leader, everybody thumbs the tables. Now tomorrow, if somebody says, say Rahul Gandhi is the president of the Congress party, everybody will thump the table. In fact, Congress party has been so confused on how to handle this that they keep on kicking that can down the street of elections, because they don't know what happens if somebody in the Congress party actually decides to contest against Rahul Gandhi or a Gandhi. So how do you hold the pretense of an election when the outcome is so well known, unless the Gandhis say that they are not in the race? Now that is also not on the card. So if you look at all that, you can see how far the practice of our own democracy, particularly our intra-party democracy, that's important. Democracy within a party. Our intra-party, the practice of our intra-party democracy has now disappeared. There is no party in India which has democracy within. They might have some secret confabulations and they'll say we met in Udaipur or we met in Pachgani or wherever if any party met, and we discussed all this quite candidly and freely. But there are no contests within our parties anymore. Contests, if anything, are for the mind space and for the attention of the party high command. So once again, to decide a chief minister in Punjab, it's not the Punjab legislature party that will vote and there'll be 2 contestants or 3 contestants. No, it will be decided by the high command, and it's true of every party. So just as I wasn't singling out Mr. Modi and the BJP earlier, I'm not singling out Aam Aadmi Party or Arvind Kejriwal in this case, or the Congress party and say Ashok Gehlot and Bhupesh Baghel, so on and so forth. So since then, that aborted challenge by Sharad Pawar to Narasimha Rao, no Indian party has really had active internal democracy and contest. There are some examples. For example, when opportunity did arise for possibly Jyoti Basu to lead a third front government in New Delhi as Prime Minister, it was the Politburo of the CPM which outvoted the idea, which said they don't accept the idea. And it seems it was the younger members of the Politburo who decided that it was a bad thing. So they voted against it. So that's one honorable example. We haven't seen many more besides that. That's why when something like this happens, say in Britain, that we get so surprised. In fact, in Britain also, it's the conservatives who have strange rules of their own. For example, one rule is that now that within the party, Boris Johnson has won a vote of confidence, there cannot be another vote of confidence for 12 months. But knowing Tory party, from whatever I read, they can always change their rules because they're quite tough about their politics. And their party is right now divided. Now, the fact is that the other phenomenon that we learn about from British politics is the frontbencher backbencher phenomenon. So frontbenchers are MPs who are spokespersons for the party, who speak more often. Backbenchers, they're also MPs, but they are like rank and file. So in 1922, these backbenchers organized themselves into a kind of a ginger group, which over time became a formal organization, a backbenchers organization. This is called Tory Backbencher 1922 Committee because it came into being in 1922. 1923-24, it became more powerful. Now it meets once a week, and it's there that the backbenchers discuss their ideas, and then they figure out how to influence the frontbenchers or decision makers, or how to influence policy and how to get their voices heard. Can you imagine something like this happening in a party with a bunch of MPs or MLAs in India? Least of all, in a ruling party in any state. I mean, if such a thing happened, if people organize themselves like this, and it is this committee to which these 54 MPs wrote this letter demanding a vote of confidence on Boris Johnson. Can you imagine a ginger group like that demanding a vote of confidence against the Prime Minister or against any Chief Minister in India? If it's a centre, after that, suppose 101 MPs in the BJP voted against Mr. Modi, it's all theoretical. Please don't take me on my word. And please don't take out a 10-second clip from this and I said this will happen or this should happen. I'm not saying that. I'm giving you a notional example. Can you imagine how busy CBI, CBDT, ED, etc., if not NIA and the rest, will be after that, going after these 101 MPs? And similarly, if such a thing happened, for example, in West Bengal, if, say, 50 MLAs voted against in an internal party contest, voted against Mamata Banerjee, can you imagine what will happen? How busy would West Bengal police would be after that? Or in Punjab, if it happened against the Chief Minister. So that is the difference between a system like ours now, where the party leader is supreme and the party's will is binding on everybody, to systems which still have classical old parliamentary democracies, where parties have inner party politics, as it's called sometimes in India, but kind of intra-party politics. So this is very much an example of that. Now, it's true that Boris Johnson is by no means out of the woods. There is a parliamentary privilege committee inquiry also against him for telling lies about parties at his home, because it looks like he and his staff were partying and spilling a lot of beer and stuff while a lockdown was on and normal Britons were not even allowed to meet their family and friends. Now that has become a big allegation. So the privilege committee inquiry is on the allegation that he lied to Parliament. So that now goes on. But the fact is that this is not the first time that this has happened. In fact, 4 of the last 5 leaders of Conservative parties have faced votes of no confidence from their own party. And of the people who are familiar, Theresa May faced a vote of no confidence within her own party, as did John Major. It's also important to note that both Theresa May and John Major actually got more votes than Boris Johnson has done this time. So Boris Johnson has claimed victory, but the fact is that today 41.2% of his MPs have voted against him, his own party's MPs. 58.8% have voted for him. And that is what has left him quite weak. But knowing him, he will brazen it out, and we don't know what he'll do because he's also not a conventional politician. He's got a very thick skin, and he will try to wear down his opposition, and let us see what he does going ahead. But having said that, just looking at parliamentary practices and how democracies function. Now, British Parliament, I will take you back to another fairly recent example, 2015. Not that recent, but fairly recent in the sense that some of the players are the same as today, and also some of the issues are the same as today. So 2015, British Parliament was debating whether or not to use air power against ISIS in Syria or not. As you would expect, generally the Labour or the left party at that point, or the left MPs, Labour was then headed by Jeremy Corbyn, who was more left of most Labour leaders. So they were opposing the idea. While this debate was going on, there was a stunning 13-minute speech delivered, and I'll share a link with you, you can hear it. A stunning 13-minute speech delivered by a leader called Hilary Benn. Hilary Benn wasn't just any other Labour MP. He was the shadow foreign secretary in the Labour Party. So he gave a speech in 13 minutes, masterful speech, where he first upbraids the Prime Minister, then David Cameron, the Tory Prime Minister, for having attacked his leader, that's Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, and then comes to the point. And he says, and his point is that while my party is saying that using air power against ISIS is a bad idea, I think it's a good idea. And he goes on to make a case for leftists of all of Europe, socialists of all of Europe, which was seen as a message to François Hollande also in France, that it's their responsibility to fight the new fascism, which was ISIS. So he makes that point, and he appeals to his own party's MPs to vote against the party's view and vote in favor of the government. In that case, because there was a difference of opinion within the Labour Party withdrew the whip, relaxed the whip, and allowed MPs to vote as they wished. So in that poll, although Conservatives had a majority and they would have won anyway, but 66 MPs of the Labour Party crossed party lines to vote with the ruling party or vote with the Treasury benches. Nothing happened. No anti-defection law applied to them. That, in my view, is a healthy version of parliamentary politics. In fact, in 2015, when this episode played out in the House of Commons, I had written a national interest column headlined Democracy by Danda. I'm sharing a link with you on this, where again we had talked about how little freedom do our MPs and MLAs have now. In fact, we had then noted, and I'm underlining again, that there are only 3 places I find where our MPs still seem a little bit freer, still seem to speak a little bit more freely away from the party line. One, of course, is in the Central Hall of Parliament. So we don't know how long will Central Hall last now, or what will be its equivalent in the new Parliament building. Second, in the after-hours party circuit in Delhi, which is when they are all making deals amongst themselves. And third is in parliamentary committees. And that is the reason, unfortunately, that even people like me, who normally would demand transparency everywhere, particularly in parliamentary practice, I am quite happy that the hearings of our parliamentary committees are not televised or not open to the media. Because if that happens, then every MP in those committees also will have to follow the party line. Today, in those committees, they do not necessarily follow the party line. They give their own intellectual and philosophical and political inputs, and they arrive at a report. They produce a report which does not require a vote, because if they were to vote, then the question of whip will again come in. And that is the reason our parliamentary committees, not all, but most of them, produce very sound and very fair professional reports. We in our country, because we got so hassled and so panicked and so morally shamed by frequent defections, that we passed an anti-defection law so tight that if an MP or MLA does not follow the party whip, then it gets disqualified. right? Which means today our MPs and MLAs are not lawmakers anymore. They make no contribution. They just listen to the party, the order comes, and they all vote in the same direction. To that extent, too, there is something to learn here. So maybe there can be whip used on bills or on issues where a government can fall. For example, a vote of no confidence or vote of confidence, you can have a whip issued, but to issue a whip on each and everything undermines democratic practice and undermines also the authority and the stature of elected lawmakers because they are not making laws anymore. If the whip system is followed as strictly as it is now done in India, then basically they all become rubber stamps.